Hey, my name is Charles here at J-Tech. What we're going to do is we're going to set up an alignment on this Class 8 vehicle. It's an International. This is kind of a complicated process, so we're going to do it in steps. It's best to write down your steps. That way you don't miss anything. Some of the tools you're going to need. Well, first, you need to perform your pre-inspection and pre-alignment inspection of the vehicle. So to do that, you're going to make sure you need a pressure gauge and a tread depth, and to fix the little issues of the tires before you even start your alignment, because little things can throw your alignment off completely. So to set up for this, we need, for this style, there's many different styles of doing an alignment. This one's a little bit more complicated, but most shops are going to be able to do this. We're going to need a piece of straight steel bar, square bar. We're actually putting it across the frame. If you come in here, well, look, we've got it clamped to the frame. We used a speed square to ensure that the steel bar is square to the frame. We need to do this, and we need to have an equal distance on both sides. So we take our tent measure. We're actually going to make it a little bit easier for ourselves since we're by ourselves. We're going to hook on the inside of the frame to make equal distance. This comes out to let's see, a little over a half, 3/4, so 13/16. So it's 38, 13/16. We'll make sure we check it on both sides to make sure it's even on both sides. That's just setting this up. The first measurement we're going to take is actually offset. And what that is the axle offset from side to side of the vehicle. It's supposed to be even on both sides. While we check this, you just pick one side of the tire. We're going to measure from the frame to the outside of the tire. Now we take another piece of steel, to give us a straight edge. We put it on the flat side of the tire, make it just pretty straight, eyeball straight. One way to do this is bring it up to the top of the bead of the vehicle. Bring the steel up to the top bead. This will give you a nice place to rest it. Put your leg underneath it, so you've got a pretty straight piece of metal. You go to your frame. We measure out to your steel bar. This is coming out to about a little over 32 and a half, 32 and what's that? 7/16, so 32 and 7/16. Now we want to write these measurements down. So what we're going to do is we're going to write them on the tire, take a piece of chalk.
1 inch off.
38, 7/16. Just going to write them on the tire so we know that's our thrust here. So now we're going to go to the other side of the tire and do the same thing. And all we're doing, we're measuring offset. Well, the reason we measure offset is because if your axle's not straight in your vehicle, it'll cause even more problems. So we gotta straighten the vehicle first. Now, if the axle is straight on both sides, there's no thrust to it, you can leave it. Like, it'll still drive straight. The issue with that, though, is it's going to screw up your drivetrain a lot. It's going to cause a lot of vibration. It's going to break other things. It still might screw up your alignment. Looking at 32 and a little over a half, so what's that, 9/16, 10/16, which is, what's that, 5/8? 13 and 5, 32, 5/8, or we're going to go with 9/16, 9/16, 10/16, excuse me, 10/16. We're going to leave it at 16, so it's our original measurement. 16, I want to do any conversion. Maybe you said this is 32 and that was 38, so we're already looking. It's already different. Our offset is already that direction. So next measurement we're going to do is called a thrust angle. What we do with the thrust angle is we need string. We're going to loop it around the tires, measure it up to the steering axle. Now, to set this up, I didn't talk about this, but this is a critical step. So when you pull the vehicle in, you need to let it coast to a stop. Keep your wheel straight, and it needs to coast to a stop. That way, there's no stress on the suspension. There's no, it's not tweaked anyway, and everything's nice and lined up. So we're gonna get the string, and we're gonna get our string. What we're doing with this, we're gonna measure thrust angle. Now, earlier I said 38 on that side. It's 32 and 7/16. It's a 32 and 10/16. So that's better. That's more believable. So we hook our string. All right, just gonna hook our string around the back. We're gonna kind of cut the tire in thirds and do it the top third of the tire. So what we're doing is we're gonna take this end, we're gonna make sure the string touches both walls of this tire. And we're gonna go down, we're gonna measure it on the front axle. So we're gonna come down here. Make sure it touches. Touches. We're going to measure our distance. This is going to give us our thrust. Looks like it's about an inch. Maybe an inch and a quarter. This will give us an inch and a quarter. So how we figure this out, our thrust angle, we need to do this on both sides. Depending on where the greater thrust is, which direction. Thus, if we add two measurements together or subtract, the two measurements are on the same side. Greater measurements on the same side, we subtract. The greater measurements, like if the tire is pushed more that direction, but the greater thrust is on this side, add them together. So again, loop it. It's kind of a pain. Go up to the top third of the tire. Measure. Well, that's a lot different. So we're looking at 3.5. Yeah, it's about 3.5 on the dot. So we got 3.5 inches. If you want to do the math, that's cool, but you can just 2/4 to make sure it's identical to the other side. So we're looking at about like 2.25 inches of thrust this direction. So we just add them together, it'll give us our thrust angle. So what we're looking at is we're looking at this intermediate axle pushed that direction. So this vehicle drives a little bit to the left. So the driver is going to have to correct by pulling that, pull to the left, so it steers to the vehicle, steering to the right, so it pulls it straight. So, first thing we do before we do anything else is we fix this offset. The way to fix this offset is kind of complicated. You need to come in here, see these U-bolts, flash on you. You see that? So there's U-bolts down here. I think you see this one. So you need to loosen up these U-bolts and move it. The issue with that is once you loosen up a U-bolt, you need to replace that U-bolt. So pretty much before you start this, you need to make sure you have 4 new U-bolts to do some alignment. Loosen it up. What we're going to do is we're going to push the offset, move it in to retract our thrust angle. Once we fix that up, the next thing we do, we got to make sure that our axle is square to the frame or tram. We got to check tram. We're going to square the axle to the frame. We're going to do that with what we set up earlier with that square piece of bar across the frame. This gives us square. We're just going to measure and make squares. Okay, now we're going to check to make sure. So once we fix our offset and our thrust, fix our thrust angle, that means that this axle would be square with the frame. Now we haven't actually fixed it because it's a trainer. I know it's bad to say that, but this is the way people can learn how to do these measurements. But once we get this axle square, we got to make sure our rear axle is square to this, and then we move to do our front alignment. So we're still going to do the back. So when we do this, to measure our height of our tire. Now, I've already measured the height of this tire, but for demonstration, I'm just going to go down the middle of the tire. We're going to take measure up. This is a 40-inch tire. Especially if you already done your during your pre-inspection, you made sure it was aired up correctly and the treads are good. So you're going to get your 40-inch tire. So what you're going to do is you take that measurement, cut it in half, find your 20-inch mark. Using our square metal here, we're going to measure from this angle. So this looks like it's about 27 and a quarter, 27 and 1, 2, looks like 27 3/16. So that's this angle here. When we do it on the other side, make sure it's identical. That means that this axle is square with the vehicle. Now the reason we do that is we have to make sure the back axle is square. So we do the same thing. Measure our axle. Got our 20, 20. Go to 20 on this side. Alright, now what we're doing is we're measuring our distance from the inside of the bead to the inside of the bead. You can do the outside, you just gotta pick a spot. If you're gonna hook it, just pick a spot. The issue with hooking though is that you've got the wall of the tire. So it's best to put it on, just what I like to do is I put my finger on the inside of the bead or the rim here, and I bump it up against my finger. Now that's not perfect, but it gets me as close as I can get. And I check the inside on this one too. So the inside to inside, this is 29 inches. Even. So now we go around the other side. Measure this. This is 27 even. So we can already tell that this is crooked. So our tram isn't going to be that great. But once we get the axle straight, fixing it from before, and again, go inside to inside. About 29 and a quarter. Now, if our measurements were good and our axle was straight, and this was still 29 and a quarter, that tells me that this axle is a quarter an inch that direction. So I need to bring it forward. And again, loosening up those U-bolts, pushing it forward. If you loosen set up a U-bolt, you need to replace that U-bolt. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. Once we do that, that's our back. Our rear alignment is aligned. And then we move to the forward alignment. The next thing we do is called it's called a set off. Figure out where we go. Alright, now we're doing the front alignment of the vehicle. We've already finished the rear. The first measurement is setback. What setback measures is the tilt of your axle. Again, making sure it's square with the frame. So the best way to do this is at the bolt or the leaf spring, or at least some place that is nice and that doesn't move. We're actually going to use the bottom of this bracket right here. Measure from the bottom of the bracket to the axle. This looks like, and I make sure everything's nice and straight, we're not tilting anything. 15 16. So this is 24, 15 16. Again, you gotta write it down somewhere. Alright? Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So again, we're measuring setback. The only issue is you gotta make sure it's exactly the same point. So we're gonna hook it on the bracket. Nice strong area. "24, 15, 16. So it's identical. So there is no twist in our axle. Good. One thing, right? Well, next thing we need to do is our caster camber. When I do this, we got this nifty little thing called a protractor, electronic protractor, dial protractor, invented by a genius, so we don't have to figure this out. So our caster is how far back the wheels are. And that sounds weird because it's a circle, but we're going from the middle of the axle and how far shifted back it is. That's set by the kingpin inside the axle. It's one of those measurements that is not really changeable, but it can be. Debatable, I guess. And that's just how far back this is set. And the way we do this, you take the protractor, you set it on the frame. Put it on the frame, turn it on. Okay? Then we gotta zero it. We're gonna zero our protractor. So what this does, you can't see it, but it tells us that our frame is flat. Now you just pull it up. It shows our frame is flat. We're gonna take our protractor from the frame and stick it on top of our kingpin. Alright, this is gonna suck. Just gotta be flat. Okay, I found a flat spot. I'm gonna press hold. The measurement is 7.6. And it's got an arrow up. So that means our axle is sitting back. Our caster. So we do the same thing on the other side. So the measurements, depending on how you do it, might be a little bit different. As in, it might read 15 or 16. The point is that the numbers are similar. It doesn't matter if the thing reads 15, or it reads 7, or it reads 5. As long as they're identical, you know you don't have any, that they're the same. Now the reason you want to check this is if one is more forward than the other, it's going to have more wheel off the ground when you're doing, especially when you're doing your turns. So again, we find the frame, zero it on the frame, and we put it down on the kingpin. Again, you can't see, it's really dark. Again, 7.6, and it's tilted that direction. So that tells me that my axles, my caster angle is the same. negative, positive. Back is positive, forward is negative, positive. So the next measurement we're going to do is the camber. So when we do this, find the middle of the tire, set our protractor on the floor. Once again, zero it out. We pick up our protractor, we put it on the actual rim. This is the tire's bowed, the wall is, from the, so we're going to put it on the rim. Because the rim's got a flat area. Now again, this says 98.8. It's got an arrow pointing in that direction. What's that mean? That means 98.6 or 98.8, that direction. It's pointing that direction. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, we stick it on the ground. Perpendicular to the tire. Zero it out. Pick it up and put it on the rim. It says 98.8 again. That direction. So they're identical. So this tire is kind of like this. So again, when we put a weight on it, it's like this. So we put weight on it, it's going to pull it out. It's 98.8 in that direction. Alright, so the next measurement we do is toe. Now toe is as we're looking down on top of the vehicle, if the tire is pointed in or out. We want them slightly in. When I mean slightly, I'm talking like 16 inch, like a 16th of an inch max, so like a 32nd on each side equal. One way to do this, we get the vehicle off the ground and we take a piece of chalk, we come and we mark the inside of this tread, middle tread. And we spin the tire, and as we spin the tire, we take like a pin or something, we spin the tire and hold the pin. Now, this will kind of give you a zigzag line if you do it with a pin, but if you take a jack stand and put it on the ground and spin the tire, it'll be in a flat area. It's going to describe the inside of this. It gives us a nice straight angle, a straight line. And what that's going to do, it's going to give us a perfect line on both sides of the tire. And we're going to measure from the line that's made, that's scribed in the tire, to the other line scribed in the tire. So once we scribe, when we do this, we're going to scribe a line and we're going to measure from the middle of this line. So you need a partner for this. The middle of this line to the middle of the line on the other side of the tire. Now we've already done this because you need to get this. It's a long process. You got to get the vehicle off the ground, scribe the tire, put the vehicle back down on the ground, make sure everything's nice and straight again. You might even need to roll the vehicle out and roll it back in. Like it's a process. And then measure the tire. So our front measurement, so from the front of the tire in on both sides, was 93 and 4/16. And the back was 93 and 3/16. So we have 1/16. But the issue is that it's actually towed out, not in. So that's going to actually drag the tires instead of bring the load in when we put the load on. So we do have to mess with the alignment here with our using our crossbar, moving our tie rod ends a little bit out to move that toe from a 16th of an inch out to a 16th of an inch in. That's what we got to do on this to fix the front alignment. I know it's a long process. I really hope you learned something. It's really convoluted, but it's not that difficult. It's just a pain if you have problems. Fixing the rear axle, trying to fix your, especially if you have issues with your setback, because now you're really messing with the front axle here. There's brakes, there's your drag links. You gotta mess with your, hope you got adjustable drag link. There's a lot of issues you mess with if you have to mess with your front axle. So I hope this helped. I know it's difficult. Just give it a try. Hopefully it helps. If you have anything, put it down below.